A week late, but there you go. Sorry about last week, y'all. I was worn out. I was runt. Y'all know that word, runt? R-R-R-R-N-T, runt. Yeah, in a good way. I earned it. But just really, really, really tired. So tonight we're going to wrap up our series on Holy Week and the like. Yeah, we're going to talk about Pascha and what to expect. So don't expect much theology. This will be just kind of description. And hey, here I am. Welcome to my house in Hartwell, Georgia. Hartwell. They can tell I'm not from around here because I keep saying Hartwell because that's how it's spelled. Like when we lived in Woonsocket, we would say, we're going to go up north to Worcester, or Pawtucket. You got to learn how the locals say the words, and it takes a while. Hartwell. Welcome to Hartwell. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's see, I just got a text. Someone is asking me a question. Did Athanasius believe in the Filioque? No, Athanasius did not believe in the Filioque. It's interesting. So, hey, Enoch, God bless you, brother. So when you're talking about the Filioque, there are a million Filioques. Now, you say, no, it's one word. It's just one word. How can there be a million of them? Yeah, because if you look at explanations that Roman Catholics were given to explain it and defend it and so on, so they range from boldly heretical to, if I squint at that, that looks almost Orthodox. Yeah. And so when you get Orthodox fathers pulled into a discussion where they're used to support the Filioque, that's what's happened. Someone has taken something that they wrote on the relations between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and they squinted at it enough to where they can say that it supports. And what that does then, though, when somebody says, see, this person supports the Filioque, it doesn't, those words, people are not being good with their words. Words have meaning, and what that implies that they would support all of the ways that Roman Catholics are explaining the Filioque. And no Orthodox theologian can do that. You can squint and you can say, and this is what some Orthodox theologians do, ones that we would call theologically liberal, right? They squint and they say, if we understand it in this way, then it is as a theological opinion defensible because that's in accordance with with the way Orthodox theologians have described the relationship. But the problem is, and that's one of the things between us and union with us in Rome, right? The problem is there's no jettisoning of all the heretical explanations. And you can't have that. I mean, that's just crazy talk. That's a pig in the poke, right? You can't do that. And so there would have to be, as part of these theological discussions that are going on, there has to be an exact description of what is meant. And the same goes for other things that we disagree on. The primacy of the Pope of Rome, right? If we were in communion with the Pope of Rome, the Pope would have primacy. What does that mean? And we can squint and we can say, this is what we mean. And they can squint and say, yeah, okay, like at a theological commission or even at a council or something. They can say, yeah, okay, so you agree? We're like, yeah, we agree to that. But everybody didn't sign on to that. And so you still have, the bulk of Roman theology being, bad ecclesiology and, extremely problematic. So there you go. Good question. So Athanasius did not believe in the Filioque. certainly the way that what it has come to mean. He believed in a certain kind of relationship between the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That did not subordinate, but that would allow for a participation of the Son in that relationship. Okay? So there you go. And I'm not going to get any deeper in the weeds on that. But if you want to, Jay Dyer, man, he nails that kind of stuff. He knows, and he was Roman Catholic for a while. He knows it inside out. And he's really smart, and he thinks in that way. He was trained as a philosopher. And that helps if you got metaphysical training. It really helps with parsing out these ideas. Because for the rest of it, we're like, yeah, no. And our friends, they're like, no, it doesn't mean what you think it means. It does. Nope, doesn't mean what you think it means. That's the camel's nose. You're like, oh, come on. And then they explain it, and you're like, oh, camel's nose. Do y'all know the camel's nose? So the idea is never let a camel get its nose into your tent, because the whole camel will then get in. Sorry, y'all. I'm going to have to mute for a second. Lord have mercy. I had to cancel my class last night, my seminary class last night, because I lost my voice. I lost my voice. It was just barely made it through Orthodoxy and Matins on Sunday, and the homily was more of a podvig than normal even. It's always a podvig for people who listen to me. But podvig is a spiritual struggle. So there's actual pain involved. And it's not sickness. I went to the doctor because I couldn't sleep because my throat hurt so much. I'm like, oh, great. What if I got strep? So I went in there. They go, yep, not strep. You're just a wuss. Grow up. So I'm like, okay. So that's why I've got my honey drink right here. It's supposed to help, but it's not. There you go. Enough about that. We're supposed to be talking about Pascha. Okay. So last time I think we left off, we had talked about the Matins of Holy Saturday, and what an awesome service. And I took what we'd been talking about and I condensed it and then created a framework for understanding it using St. Maximus and St. Dionysius. And then I gave a retreat on that. That's where I was last weekend. I gave a Lenten retreat up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And it went really well. Thank God. They, I don't know, they keep inviting me back. And it was fantastic. My bishop was there, His Eminence Metropolitan Antony. And so I got to bounce some things off of him, and because there are varying liturgical practices, and I've got ideas, and I do things as I think he likes me to do them. But I was able to get some, like, for example, remember we talked about Holy Wednesday, and about how in many parishes that's unction. Well, he doesn't. That is not his preference, because he says we have all of Great Lent to focus on our own repentance. Let's at least for one week, let's move the focus away from ourselves. So he loves the service, just not putting it in the middle of Holy Week. And notice the tie-in that we get is, we on Tuesday night we sing about that hymn of Cassia, about the woman who anointed the Lord's feet with oil. And so you tie that in, right? Us being anointed with oil. Anyways, it was a wonderful experience, and I'm thankful to everybody there. I meant to record it so I could put it up on my podcasts. Forgot to hit record. So I can tell you, that was the best retreat ever. Okay, there you go. Let's talk about Pascha. So we've been through Holy Saturday, and one of the variations that I mentioned between the Byzantine practice and the Slavic practice is what you do after you do that wonderful procession, that funeral procession, holy God, holy mighty, holy undying, right? That's what it sounds like in the Slavonic and the Ukrainian. Svyati Besmerny, right? Holy undying, deathless, right? And it's really, you're at a funeral, you're carrying a casket. It's like when you're walking out of the church and you pronounce the resurrection of the young man, the widow's son. But it all makes sense when you do this procession on Holy Saturday, because you're singing that same hymn that you've sung for so many beloved, right? And your own funeral, you're not singing at your own funeral, but, as far as I know. But there you go. So we were there, and then one of the variations is when the Slavs come in from that procession, they put the epitaphios back on the tomb. And when the Greeks and the Antiochians come back in, they put it up on the altar. So, hey, Colin from Australia. Hey, thanks for the book recommendation. The one, oh my goodness, I forgot the name. Korea's book that he co-authored with that other guy, where they commandeer dead golems. That's so cool. What a wonderful book. So thanks for recommending that. So when you're done with that service, you've got two different states, right? And that matters. It has an effect on how the remaining services go. So the first resurrection service of Pascha, Servants of War. That's it. Yeah, fantastic book. And that is a beautiful service. It's the morning service in many parishes. Postavu, it's like at 3:00, right? And it's fantastic. And there are 15 Old Testament readings. Maybe we talked about this. I can't remember. I've done this talk so many times now because Father Harry Linsenbickler and I did it for Made to be a Kingdom as well. And his insights are just fantastic. So I this is a shameless plug for that Ancient Faith podcast, Made to be a Kingdom, and especially the episodes that we did on about Holy Week. So 15 Old Testament readings, unless you are following this book, right? This book is the Antiochian book, and it has 3. And I guess if you're going to pick 3, of course it has the best ones in it. It starts with the creation story, and then it moves to Jonah, which Jonah is just fantastic. That hymn, that's a resurrection hymn in the middle of it. And then you have the 3 holy youths, and you break into song towards the end, and you do it antiphonally between the chanter and the people. It's just fantastic. And another high point is the singing of Psalm 81, Psalm 82. And if you're following Father Stephen DeYoung and Father Andrew Damick's podcast on ancient faith, you'll recognize that one. That's one of the big Divine Council psalms, right? And it's the proclamation of the resurrection, the defeat of the demons, and the binding of the strong man, and the defeat of the demons. So there you go. And everything is turned over to light, and you've made the turn into the resurrection, right? So from then on out, you're celebrating the resurrection. The gospel reading is the proclamation of the resurrection. So fantastic service. Go if you at all can. It's just amazing. And then afterwards, you bless some food, right? So that you can have a little bit to eat while you stay in church and wait for the nocturne service. Now, the nocturne service is interesting in the Slavic tradition. So in the Slavic tradition, and Father Harry tells me this is a later change, and we start out with everything dark. So the priest has on his exorasa, right? That riasa with the big impractical sleeves, and a stole. In our tradition, maybe you might be wearing your cuffs, but everything's dark. And the epitaphios, the plashenitsa, the corpus, not the corpus, but the icon of the corpus, is there on the tomb, right? When Greeks and Antiochians go into church for that service, it's not the case. Right? Already been taken to the altar. But there's this beautiful moment in the nocturne service where the choir sings, "I will arise." And it's very dramatic. And that is the moment the priest has already come out and censed around the tomb 3 times. And when that part is sung, "I will arise," picks up epitaphios and takes it into the altar, right? So very dramatic. And at that point, the priest, changing into bright clothes and everything, you get ready for the procession. Colin says that's where you walk under the tomb. Yeah, it depends on the tradition. So most people walk in under the tomb at the end of Matins. At the procession of Matins. Right? As they come in the doors, they go under the... And that's really neat. A lot of symbolism there. Symbolism in everything. I'm not going to last much longer. My voice is going. In the Greek and the Antiochian tradition, there's not that dramatic moment. There's no need for it. There's just the anticipation of, okay, in just a minute, the priest is going to bring the light out of the altar. And you have the singing of, "O come, receive the light from the unwaning light, and glorify Christ, who is risen from the dead." And that's sung 3 times. The priest brings the lit candle out from the altar, and depending on the tradition, parishes vary, will light, maybe the ushers, and the ushers will take the light out and light other people's, right? But if you're in the pews or you're in the space, don't just pull out your lighter and light your own, right? This is a symbolic moment, right? You're taking the light of Christ and showing how it spreads throughout the people, right? So this bringing of darkness into light, life over death. Okay, and we've got a special melody that we use in the parishes I serve. Special melody. Yeah. You want to hear it? Let's see if I can do it. Oh, come, receive the light from the unwaning light, and glorify Christ who is risen, 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 risen. Glorify Christ who is risen from the dead. Yeah, and you just pray that I get my voice back before Pascha, or else, man, it's just going to be a long service, right? Yeah, and extra points if you email me recognizing that melody, right? It's an ancient melody. So, and then the procession around the church, right? And you leave, then it's dark. And you get to the doors, and the Antiochians, and I assume the Greeks, have a more developed tradition of the conversation that goes on at this point. And I see it spreading among the Slavs as well, who is the King of Glory, right? Okay. And you have the singing of Christ is risen for the first time. And let God arise and let his enemies be scattered, right? So now you're full bore, right? And so for the next 2 hours, you are wide open because you're going to process in, all the lights are on, and don't you dare leave anything on that track, right? You just go and bring out your best. And, grace abounds. It's a beautiful service. And you've got lots of extra sensing, lots of Christ is risen, Christos voskres, Christos anesti, right? And it's just a huge celebration. In between Matins and the liturgy, you've got the best homily you hear all year, and that's the Paschal homily of St. John Chrysostom, which is amazing. Amazing. And then, it used to be the case that priests would, back in the early church, there'd be the part in the service where right now we do the anaphora, and the anaphora wouldn't be scripted. It would be like, okay, riff on these themes, right? And the priest would riff on those themes. And, some of us are knuckleheads. So I bet you it got back to the bishops that we just weren't doing that very well, that we could do better. That actually, St. John Chrysostom and St. Basil could do better. So those became set pieces. This is the perfect way to do this. Here, just read this. I wonder if one day bishops will have heard how badly we preach in our parishes, and they'll say, here, Father Anthony, just read this. No, here's for every week. Yeah. Right? That's progress. Okay. Anyways, enough silliness. And then in the Slavic tradition, and at both the parishes that I serve after that, you will have the blessing of baskets and then the best potluck of the whole year, where we dig into those baskets. Now the services will be a little bit different in Waynesville and Anderson. So in Waynesville, we will have the first resurrection service at like 3:00, and we'll go through that. And then people are welcome to stay, read the Acts of the Apostles, and then at 10:00 we will start the nocturnes and matins and go into the resurrection. Then we'll bless baskets, and people will stay as late as they want. I will, alas, not be partaking of that great potluck, because I will then be hopping in my car and heading south so that we can do those services in Anderson in the morning. So we'll start the nocturnes. Let's see, I've got my calendar up. Because if I ever tell you a time or a date and I'm not looking at a calendar, I'm not meaning to lie to you. It's just a noetic effect of the fall. Yeah. Let's see here. So we'll start at 8 a.m. with nocturnes, orthros, and liturgy. Yeah, we could start earlier, but not if your priest really does need at least a couple hours of sleep. Because I'm weak. I'm lazy. And then after that, we'll go straight through. We'll bless baskets, and we'll have our agape meal, and then we'll have agape vespers at 1:00. They'll have a deacon's agape vespers at 3:30. Agape vespers are interesting. In the Antiochian and maybe Greek, I don't know, tradition, you have the gospel read in many, many languages. Okay, that's not something that I'm used to. There's nothing wrong with it, but just not part of the typica that I'm used to. But there's something that we do in the Ukrainian tradition that I don't think is done in the Antiochian or Greek tradition, and that is at the service of Pascha when we're reading those verses from the first chapter of St. John. In the beginning was the Word. There's a certain way it's read. So you read one verse in English, and then you read that verse in the language of the second language of the people, right? In a third language of the people, if you got it, right? So I would usually read it in English, and then I'd read it in Ukrainian. And then you pause, and the bell tolls. Okay? And then you do the second verse, and the bell tolls, right? It's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. A little bit of gilding the lily, maybe. I don't know. But it's beautiful. Okay. So forgive me for being short tonight. I just, my voice is gone. Pray that it comes back for next week. Because the Holy Week with a priest that doesn't have any voice is, it's a hesychastic Holy Week. Hesychastic Holy Week. You get that? You get that? All right. Well, God bless y'all. And pray for me. Pray for me. Pray for all the people that I serve. And I will see y'all on the other side of this. We won't have another class for a little bit. Okay? And look forward to hearing from y'all. You can always email me, father.anthony@yahoo.com. And until then, Godspeed.